Stop the match. The voice cut through the roar of the arena, sharp enough to make the front rows fall silent before the echoes swallowed it. Thousands of people had packed into the humid Bangkok stadium, the air thick with heat, sweat, and expectation. Spotlights burned through a haze of incense and cigarette smoke. Vendors shouted over the din, bets were being whispered, exchanged, sealed with nods. In the center of it all stood a man who did not belong. He wasn't dressed like the others. No ceremonial robe, no entourage, no swelling music announcing his arrival. Just a plain black shirt, dark trousers, and a stillness that seemed to defy the chaos around him. The crowd noticed him only long enough to laugh. Who let him in the ring? Is this a joke? The undefeated Thai champion, towering and sculpted from years of relentless training, rolled his shoulders and smirked. He had crushed every challenger placed before him. His record was spotless, his reputation untouchable. This was supposed to be another victory lap. He pointed at the quiet man with theatrical disbelief. The audience erupted in jeers, sensing entertainment. The stranger didn't react. He simply stepped forward. For a moment, their eyes met, one filled with amusement, the other with a calm so deep it felt like a warning. A murmur rippled through the older spectators, those who watched with more attention than noise. Something about the stranger's posture, the way he breathed, the way he seemed to measure the space without moving his head. The champion laughed and gestured to the referee. "This is who they send me?" The referee hesitated. The stranger bowed, small, respectful, deliberate, and somewhere in the crowd, a single voice whispered a name. Before this story goes any further, take a second to subscribe, because stories like this deserve to be heard. No one knew yet that the laughter would soon turn to silence, and at this moment, the simple decision to step into a ring would become a lesson far greater than a fight. The question hung in the humid air. What happens when strength meets something it does not understand? The arena in Bangkok had hosted countless bouts, but that night carried a different energy, restless, electric, impatient. It was a kind of night when people came not just for sport, but for spectacle. The undefeated champion, Somchai Persert, had built his legend in that very ring. 32 victories, no defeats, no draws. His name alone sold tickets. Somchai fought with precision that made opponents look clumsy. His elbows cut through the fences. His kicks landed like hammer strikes. But more than his skill, it was his confidence, bordering on arrogance, that defined him. He fought like a man who had never imagined losing. Backstage, his team moved with rehearsed efficiency. Gloves wrapped, oil applied, rituals performed. Somchai sat quietly, eyes half closed, listening to the crowd chant his name. He let the sound fill him. This was where he belonged. Across the corridor, the stranger sat alone on a wooden bench. No team, no banners, no noise. A young event coordinator approached him with uncertainty. "Sir, the match is for professionals only. Are you sure you're—" "I'm sure," the man replied, his voice calm, almost gentle. The coordinator hesitated. Something in the man's composure made it difficult to argue. He checked the paperwork again. A late substitution, approved by a sponsor. Unusual, but technically valid. "What's your name?" the coordinator asked. The man paused, as if deciding whether it mattered. "Lee," he said. The coordinator scribbled it down and hurried away, already swallowed by the machinery of the event. Lee remained seated, hands resting lightly on his knees, eyes scanning nothing and everything. He listened, not to the noise, but to the rhythm beneath it, the shifting feet, the distant thud of gloves, the nervous laughter of fighters waiting their turn. He was not here for spectacle. He was here for something quieter. Somchai entered the arena to thunderous applause. Drums pounded, lights strobed. His silhouette appeared larger than life on the giant screen overhead. He performed the Y Crew ritual with practiced grace, honoring his trainers, his family, his country. The crowd responded with reverence. Then the announcer hesitated. In the blue corner, a late addition, "Lee." The reaction was immediate and merciless. Boos rolled through the stands like a storm. Some laughed openly. Others waved dismissively. A few shouted for refunds. Lee walked to the ring without theatrics. No music, no display. He ducked under the ropes and stood in his corner, hands at his sides, observing. Somchai stared across at him, confusion giving way to amusement. He had expected a worthy challenger, someone to test his limits. Instead, he saw a man who looked like he had wandered in from the street. The referee called him to the center. Protect yourselves at all times. Obey my commands. Touch gloves. Somchai extended his glove with exaggerated slowness, a smirk tugging at his lips. Lee touched it lightly, eyes steady, offering neither challenge nor submission. Back in his corner, Somchai's trainer whispered, "End it quickly. The crowd wants blood." Somchai nodded. Across the ring, Lee rolled his shoulders once, exhaling slowly. He wasn't focused on the crowd or the champion or the stakes. He was focused on timing, the invisible thread that connected intention to action. The bell rang. The crowd leaned forward, expecting a swift and brutal end. Somchai advanced immediately, testing range of a low kick that snapped against Lee's thigh. The sound echoed sharply. The crowd roared approval. Lee didn't retaliate. He adjusted his stance, weight shifting subtly, eyes tracking Somchai's hips rather than his fists. It was a detail only seasoned observers might notice. Another kick. Harder. Lee absorbed it, stepping back just enough to reduce impact. His breathing remained even. Somchai's smirk widened. He feinted a jab and followed with a spinning elbow meant to end the match early. Gasps erupted from the audience. Lee was no longer there. He had slipped to the side, not with speed alone, but with efficiency, as he had predicted the motion before it began. The elbow sliced through empty air. A murmur spread through the crowd. Somchai turned, surprised but still confident. He pressed forward with a combination, jab, cross, knee. Each strike carried the weight of a man used to dominating. Lee deflected, redirected, stepped out of range. No wasted motion. No counterattack. The boos began again, louder now, fueled by frustration. Fight back. Stop dancing. But in the front rows, a few older men exchanged glances. They had seen something like this before, not the movements, but the restraint, the refusal to meet force with force. Somchai's irritation began to show. He increased his pace, throwing heavier strikes, trying to corner Lee. The ring felt smaller with each step. Lee's back approached the ropes. The crowd rose, sensing the end. And then, for the first time, Lee moved forward. The shift was subtle, almost imperceptible to those caught in the noise. Lee stepped inside Somchai's range, not to attack, but to disrupt. His forearm intercepted a punch mid-path, redirecting its force. His shoulder nudged Somchai off balance. The champion stumbled half a step. It was the first time anyone in that arena had seen Somchai lose footing. A ripple of surprise passed through the spectators. Somchai recovered quickly, anger flashing across his face. He launched a devastating roundhouse kick aimed at Lee's ribs. Lee raised his leg, checking the kick with precise timing. The impact thudded through the ring, but he remained rooted. Silence crept into the front rows. Lee lowered his leg and, for the first time, struck an open-hand tap to Somchai's chest. Not a blow, a message. Somchai froze, stunned not by pain but by the audacity. The crowd erupted in confused shouts. What was that? Hit him. Lee stepped back again, returning to stillness. Somchai's pride flared. He attacked with renewed ferocity, but his movements had lost their rhythm. Each strike carried frustration. Each miss deepened it. Lee continued to evade, deflect, and step away, offering no spectacle, only control. The boos began to fade, replaced by something unfamiliar, attention. By the second round, the arena's energy had shifted from mockery to unease. Somchai's strikes were still powerful, but they no longer carried certainty. He was chasing something he could not pin down. Lee's movements were economical, almost understated. He wasn't faster than Somchai in a conventional sense. He simply moved earlier, reading intention rather than reacting to action. Somchai lunged with a flying knee, a crowd-pleasing technique that had ended fights before. Lee pivoted, guiding Somchai past him with a light touch to the shoulder. The champion landed awkwardly, forced to catch himself on the mat. Gasps replaced cheers. Somchai rose, chest heaving, eyes narrowing. This was no longer amusing. "Fight me," he growled. Lee's voice was soft. "I am." The words, barely audible, seemed to carry across the ring. Somchai charged again, throwing a barrage of punches. Lee blocked and redirected, his forearms absorbing impact while his feet traced small arcs across the canvas. To the untrained eye, it looked like avoidance. To those paying attention, it looked like mastery. In the stands, a young boy tugged at his father's sleeve. Why doesn't the other man hit him? The father hesitated. Maybe he doesn't need to. Somchai's frustration turned to desperation. He began to abandon technique for force, swinging wider, stepping heavier. The crowd, once eager for violence, now watched with growing discomfort. Lee remained composed. His breathing never broke rhythm. Sweat glistened on his forehead, but his eyes stayed clear, focused, present. Another combination came. Hook, elbow, knee. Lee slipped a hook, intercepted the elbow, and stepped inside the knee, neutralizing its power. His hand rested briefly on Somchai's shoulder, steadying him before stepping away. The gesture was so unexpected that Somchai faltered. "Why?" he demanded, voice cracking with anger and confusion. Lee did not answer. The bell rang, ending the round. Somchai returned to his corner, chest rising and falling in ragged breaths. His trainer spoke urgently, but the words seemed distant. For the first time in his career, Somchai felt something unfamiliar, doubt. Across the ring, Lee sat on a stool, eyes closed, listening to his heartbeat slow. He had not come to prove superiority. He had come to demonstrate control. Between rounds, the crowd buzzed with speculation. Some insisted the stranger was a fraud prolonging the fight. Others sensed something deeper, an invisible contest unfolding beneath the surface. Somchai's trainer gripped his shoulders. "He's playing with you. Finish him." Somchai nodded, but his confidence had thinned. He replayed each exchange in his mind, searching for openings that never seemed to exist. The bell rang. This time, Somchai approached cautiously. He circled, testing with feints. Lee mirrored him, neither advancing nor retreating. The arena grew quieter, as if the audience sensed that noise would break something fragile. Somchai threw a measured jab. Lee parried. A low kick followed. Checked. Another jab. Redirected. Minutes passed like this, an exchange of intentions rather than blows. Then Somchai saw it, or thought he did, a slight opening in Lee's guard. He committed fully, launching a powerful cross meant to end the stalemate. Lee stepped in, not away. His palm met Somchai's chest with controlled force, stopping the punch mid-extension. The impact was not violent, but it carried authority. Somchai froze, breath knocked out not by pain, but by realization. He was not fighting a man. He was confronting a principle. The turning point came not with a strike, but with a pause. Somchai staggered back, chest heaving, eyes searching Lee's face of mockery for triumph. Anything he could understand. He found neither. Only calm. The crowd held its breath. Lee lowered his hands and spoke quietly, just loud enough for Somchai to hear. "You are strong, but you are fighting the wrong battle." The words struck deeper than any blow. Somchai's fist trembled. Years of training had taught him to dominate, to overwhelm, to win. No one had ever suggested there was another way to measure strength. The referee watched, uncertain whether to intervene. Somchai took a step back. Then another. He lowered his guard. A wave of confusion swept through the arena. Some shouted for him to continue. Others watched in stunned silence. For the first time in his career, Somchai chose not to attack. And in that moment, the fight changed. The referee hesitated, glancing between the two men. "Fight," he urged, unsure how to proceed. But Somchai did not move. His chest rose and fell as he studied Lee, not as an opponent, but as a question he had never been asked. "Why didn't you hit me?" he asked. Lee's answer was simple. "Because you were already falling." The words landed with quiet weight. In the stands, the murmurs grew. Some booed, frustrated by the lack of spectacle. Others leaned forward, sensing that they were witnessing something rare, a fight dissolving into understanding. Somchai looked down at his gloved hands, the instruments of his identity. He had built his life on their power. Without them, who was he? He removed one glove. The gesture sent a shockwave through the arena. The crowd erupted, some in outrage, others in disbelief. Matches did not end this way. Champions did not surrender without a blow. But Somchai was not surrendering. He was choosing. He removed the second glove and let it fall beside the first. The sound was soft, almost lost beneath the noise. Lee watched without expression, offering neither approval nor judgment. The referee stepped forward, voice strained. "Do you yield?" Somchai hesitated, then shook his head. "No, I learn." The words, spoken in accented English, carried across the ring. The arena fell silent. In that silence, the purpose of the match shifted, from entertainment to revelation. Officials argued at ringside. Sponsors gestured angrily. Broadcasters whispered into headsets, unsure how to narrate what was unfolding. But the audience, thousands of strangers bound by shared expectation, remained transfixed. Somchai bowed deeply to Lee. It was not the ceremonial bow of a fighter. It was the bow of a student. Lee returned it. No victor was declared. No belt was raised. Yet something had been won, something invisible and enduring. In the front row, the young boy who had asked his father a question earlier watched with wide eyes. Did he lose? His father shook his head slowly. No, he changed. Security escorted Lee from the arena through a side corridor, away from cameras and shouting promoters. He walked without hurry, as he had entered, unclaimed by the spectacle he had disrupted. Behind him, the crowd's noise swelled again, confusion giving way to debate. Some would call it a disgrace. Others would call it enlightenment. Somchai remained in the ring long after the lights dimmed, staring at the gloves on the canvas. They looked smaller now, less like weapons and more like relics of a life he was beginning to question. His trainer approached cautiously. "What have you done?" Somchai answered without looking up. "I listened." Days later, footage of the match spread far beyond Bangkok. Analysts argued. Commentators scoffed. Philosophers wrote essays. Some insisted the event had been staged. Others claimed it marked a turning point in combat sports. Somchai returned to training, but his movements had changed. He struck less, observed more. He began teaching younger fighters not only how to win, but when not to fight. Parents who once feared the brutality of the sport began to notice the discipline behind it. Lee, meanwhile, disappeared into the rhythm of his own life, leaving no interviews, no explanations. His lesson had never been meant for headlines. It had been meant for a single moment, and anyone willing to see it. Months later, Somchai stood in the same arena, facing a new challenger. The crowd watched closely, remembering the night that had unsettled their expectations. The fight began. Somchai moved with precision, but without arrogance. When his opponent faltered, he stepped back, allowing recovery rather than exploiting weakness. The match ended with a clean victory, decisive, controlled, respectful. The crowd applauded, not for domination, but for dignity. Somchai bowed to his opponent, then to the audience. He had not become weaker. He had become larger than victory. Years passed, and the story of that night evolved into something between myth and memory. Some told it as a tale of humiliation, others as a lesson in restraint. For those who had been there, it remained something simpler, a moment when strength met humility and chose to listen. In a small gym across the city, Somchai taught a group of children. He showed them how to stand, how to breathe, how to bow before and after every practice. On the wall hung a pair of old gloves, untouched. "When do we fight?" one child asked. Somchai smiled gently. "When it helps someone, not when it feeds our pride." Far away, in another city, a man named Lee moved through a quiet park at dawn, practicing forms that looked like nothing and everything at once. He did not think of the arena or the crowd or the champion. He thought only of balance, because the greatest victories are rarely seen, and the strongest people are often the ones who choose restraint when the world demands force. From which part of the country are you watching this story?